Looks like we're all here. Are we ready to go?
All 6 of you are here, so it's all good.
All right. So call the meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. And all here. Are we ready to go?
1 second, please.
All 6 of you are here, so it's all good.
Let me just.
All right. So, call the meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. And all here. Are we ready to go?
Okay, all set.
Okay. All right. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, and we are good. I pledge
allegiance
to the
flag
flag
of
of
the United States of America
and
and to the republic for which it
stands
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under God,
indivisible, with
liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thanks. And I will read the statement on remote participation. Consistent with the Massachusetts Open Meeting Law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, and Regulation 940, CMR 29.10, which allows for remote participation in certain circumstances under the Massachusetts Open Meeting Law regulations. The Mendon-Upton Regional School Committee will be conducting this meeting remotely. In this particular case, all 6 members of the committee are participating remotely and virtually through video conferencing. This is consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 10th, 2020, which eased the requirements of having a meeting in a physical space open to the public and having a quorum of the committee physically present. Any and all votes will be conducted by roll call votes. Per usual, this meeting will also be live streamed and recorded. We can move on to the approval of the agenda and the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I move that we approve tonight's agenda.
I have one caveat to that for the discussion. I don't have the executive session minutes for October 5th, and I didn't send those out, so apologies, but could we table that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Got it. Okay. And you seconded the?
Yeah, I'll second it. Sure.
Great. Okay, so we vote by roll call.
Sean Nicholson, aye.
Lee Martin, aye.
Phil DeZetter, aye.
Carrie Lawrence, aye.
Dorothy Skelly, aye.
Vicki Ludwigson, aye. The agenda is approved. And then can we get a motion to approve the open session minutes of October 5th, 2020?
Motion to approve the open session minutes of October 5th, 2020.
Second.
And vote by roll call.
Sean Nicholson, aye.
Lee Martin, aye.
Phil DeZetter, aye.
Lawrence, aye.
Dorothy Skelly, aye.
Vicki Ludwigson, aye. So open session minutes are approved. All right, so moving on to superintendent's comments.
All right, good evening, everybody. First to report out was last Wednesday, Governor Baker finally released kind of a full post-COVID FY21 budget proposal for the amount of $45.5 billion for all of fiscal 21, which actually, as I note in the background notes, is about 900 million more than he proposed in the original House 1 budget. So again, this is going to be a challenge, kind of a mix of good news, bad news, however you want to look at the equation. But at this present time, they haven't really nailed down where the tax revenues statewide are going to fall. But this estimate projects about $3.6 billion less in tax revenue for this fiscal year. So basically, different sources are being used to make up that gap, including tapping the state's rainy day fund for about $1.35 billion and about another $834 million in enhanced Medicaid reimbursements. So really the net of all of this is, how does this affect us in Mendon-Upton? Not particularly favorably. I think we were wise back on, I believe it was May 5th, when the budget was recertified, assuming level funding as far as the Chapter 70 aid, because that's exactly how it's played out. But keep in mind, that's level funded to last fiscal year, to FY20. So even the very, very modest amount of $30 per student, which usually ends up being, again, something super modest in the ballpark of about $65,000 additional, we will not receive that in state aid. It is, I should note that on the cherry sheet, which I also included in the packet, it also shows our regional transportation reimbursement being level funded at the same amount as it was for the original FY21 projection. However, Jay, in kind of looking at what our regional transportation reimbursement probably will be, has reduced it to about 65% of the amount that we actually paid. So the net is, we're basically looking at a loss of about $206,000 between the regional transportation reimbursement and then some of the other accounts, such as charter school reimbursement and also net school choice. So to make things balance, as we were exactly on May 5th, Jay has included allocating the amount of $432,131 from our E&D account, which brings us to that recertified FY21 operational budget amount of $37,339,936. Jay, I don't know if there's anything that you want to add to that.
No, not really at this point. I mean, the transportation reimbursement is still, subject to change. I know that they base it on what we put in our budgeted amount when we do the end of the year report a year ago, but they directed us back in maybe August or September to go back and amend those end of the year reports to what we actually spent instead of what we budgeted. So I've done that, and that's why I'm reducing it the way I am. My attitude is, if it turns out we get more, then we've got some extra money, but I'd rather be prepared for the worst than the best. So that's the only thing. The E&D appropriation, that's really that circuit breaker money that we talked about 2 weeks ago. So it rolled into E&D. We need to appropriate it back into the budget so that we can use it this year. And we'll have to take a vote on that once we have a state budget and we recertify the budget. So this is just an estimate at this point, but it's pretty good, I think.
Thank you, Jay. Second piece in my
Right.
report.
Can I ask a quick question on that? So how do we think, because so this is just the governor's budget, it's still gonna have to go through the House and the Senate again, correct?
Yeah, and they're saying that the House and the Senate, Phil, will not get to it until after the election. So, our best case scenario would be having something finalized by Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
But I'm hearing in all likelihood, probably December.
And overall in his budget, did he basically level fund Chapter 70 to last year?
He did. He did the same thing with Chapter 70 and municipal aid.
Well, I guess we lucked out since we weren't getting much from last year to this year anyways.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
Thank
But keep in mind, the all of the additional money through the Student Opportunity Act, that's also still in limbo to the communities, that we're going to see a big windfall, like the Milfords and the Worcesters and so on.
got it.
So second piece, just kind of interesting, and I hope our next meeting, I will have a lot more information, but last Thursday, the Commissioner of Education, Jeff Riley, announced to the superintendents that the Massachusetts Department of Health will be receiving about $1 million of the Abbott rapid antigen tests that have gotten quite a bit of attention, and the mindset is the federal government is dispersing them. I believe a total of about 200 million across the country, and Massachusetts is getting about 1 million of those. And actually 2 million, but 1 million are going to pre-K through 12 school districts across the state. Now, they're definitely not the gold standard. The PCR test still is, as far as accuracy. However, the key piece is the results can be available in as little as about 15 minutes or so. So they're being recommended to have the test kits available on site in the district should you have a student or a staff member be symptomatic. So even though there's 1 million available, they're looking to send out the first batch of about 200,000 within the next couple of weeks. So when I have more details, I definitely will share them with the committee. And last but not least, you have in your packet the most current year-to-date expenditure report for this current fiscal year. Jay, is there any line item or anything that you'd like to highlight in that?
No, at this point, as far as our general accounts, I think we're in great shape. My biggest concern for this fiscal year isn't really the basic operational budget, but the cost of hybrid learning, the cost of substitutes, the cost of additional custodians, all of the PPE, all those various things that we're having to fund. And we do have a variety of grants to help out. My concern is always that we're going to exceed the expenditures that we have for grant funds. So we're being really cautious. As far as ordering, it's been actually pretty good because we haven't been in school, we've been remote, so there's not a lot of need for classroom supplies other than textbooks. But we've had to upgrade some textbooks and stuff. So I'm always cautious about this, but at this point, we're in good shape, I think. We'll let you know in a couple of months after we see what we're doing for education and instruction.
Thank you, Jay. And that is my report, Vicki.
Thanks. Do you have a sense of how many of the test kits that we would be receiving?
No information on that. I would imagine it's going to be proportionally based upon student population.
Sure, makes sense. Anyone else have any questions? All right, so we'll move on to administrators' comments.
We have with us tonight our Director of Technology Integration, Dave Quinn, and Dave will be giving an overview of just the remarkable efforts of Dave and his colleague Joe Lakeview and the entire technology department in simultaneously supporting both remote and hybrid learning. So Dave, I'm going to turn it to you and talk about just some of the hardware and some of the apps and the infrastructure, and also a lot of the staff development that's gone on.
Thanks so much, Joe. Joe, if you have a second, if you could just give me sharing screen rights.
Oh, sure.
Madam Chair, thank you for having me. Fellow members of the committee, it's always great to join you. Thank you, Dr. Marushek, for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of the entire team. My colleague, Joe Lakeview, has been with this setup every step of the way, co-leading with me. And then just want to recognize Liz Black, Felipe Angel, and Emily Dodge, all fellow members of our tech team who have been instrumental in making this a reality. And also, if you happen to see Sam O'Neill in your travels, please give him an air high five or buy him a coffee, because without him, this certainly would not have been possible. He has put in yeoman's work to make this a reality. So we spent the good chunk of the summer reviewing the feedback that we received from families, from teachers, about how to streamline the technology process in such a way that we would be prepared for both hybrid and remote learning environments, not knowing what we would be doing until late into the summer planning. And while we did quite extensive reflection upon the feedback we received in terms of, trying to streamline logins, making sure that students had devices, had internet access. I think back to, one of the my favorite lines from Pirates of the Caribbean, complications arose, ensued, and were overcome. And that's just been the kind of the mindset of the technology department is as we encounter complications, we expect them and we find a way to work through it. And we're just appreciative of the patience of the families and teachers as we, navigate this uncharted territory. But to give you kind of a overview of what we were looking at this summer, we had set up I think, which is a new record, 1,019 new iPads that were not set up. They were cased, they were labeled. That also included an additional 50 new staff iPads that needed to come out. And they were provided to faculty and students through a drive-through and home delivery service. And what makes this, equally incredible is that we didn't have 85% or 80% of the devices until about the 25th of August. We were very fortunate. We're very grateful to the select boards and town managers of both Mendon and Upton for providing funding through federal grants to make the iPad expansion possible. And we got those devices in right away. Joe was instrumental in getting those ordered for us. But just due to delays and due to the impact of COVID overseas, we really couldn't get those devices in until right about the start of when we were going to launch our PD. And that's where Sam O'Neill came in and would just provided what was, in some respects, a superhuman effort to get all of those devices set up, labeled, cased, ready to go before the start of our remote learning. And I think another feature that was complicating was that Apple, in their infinite wisdom, decided to release iOS 14 right around the start of school. It seems to be an annual occurrence, which can sometimes cause communication issues between our devices and the mobile device management system. So while we were ultimately able to get Zoom and all the needed apps onto the devices, it was a little hectic to start. But I think as one of my former mentors said, Daryl Jasper used to talk about, is that anytime you have a problem, it's also an opportunity to provide outstanding community service to students and families. So I think that was a time that our team really stepped up to provide families with what they needed. That's the feedback we're getting. I hope that was the feedback that you're getting. And I think while there's always room for improvement, I'm proud of the effort that we put in. So in addition to expanding our device access, we've also expanded into a couple different platforms, some new platforms, one of which I'll dive a little bit deeper into today. But for our standalone remote programming, we now use Edgenuity. So we brought in our substitutes who have been trained on Edgenuity, trying to get our middle school students up and running. We're also expanding the launch of our iReady platform, which provides testing for our math and ELA, just to get a sense of where we are in terms of the COVID instructional and where to provide supplemental instruction based on what students needs. And then Seesaw, which was pretty common in our elementary schools. We wanted to make sure, as provided in the guidance through DESE, that we had a universal platform for all families to be using at our elementary level. And then, reflecting on some options like Seesaw and Google Classroom and ClassDojo, we thought particularly for the lower, the K-3 or pre-K3, Seesaw would give the best option for both parental communication, students to be able to document their learning, but also a easy to use platform for newcomers, but also one that had ample support because teachers were using it across the district. And then finally, one that we're really excited about is Clever, which is a single sign-on platform. Again, one of the big pieces of feedback is that families, really had a hard time, and understandably so, managing all the different logins for our different platforms. So what Clever does is it organizes it into a one-stop shop, and I'll just kind of demo it right here for us quickly. Let me just minimize this here for a second. What's really nice about Clever is that they've got come with QR codes, so students don't have to enter in their username and password. And so Clever, if you can see my screen here, has a camera feature on it. You can allow it. And what it does is it reads the QR code and then logs the student right in. And so it becomes essentially a one-stop shop for students. All of their teachers have pages. So let's just take a quick look at Mrs. Jordan's page. She has access to her Zoom link and then different options or different tools that she'll use for instruction. It also has access to all of our login platforms as well. So you've got, BrainPop, the Seesaw platform login, STMath. It's all a one-stop shop. So I'm signed in with his mother's permission, of course, as Andrew Moran. So I tap on Seesaw, and then wait a second. I think Clever will log me in. Let's try this again. Sorry about that. Seesaw. And I'm in as Andrew. And again, no new logins to put in. Very simple for both families. So if families, have somebody working from home, it's not something that the student needs support on. Going to another Moran, we've also been using Clever up at the high school level as well. And just start the portal session. So at the high school level, again, same access to textbooks and other digital resources. But what's been really excellent just to see what they've done here is that students have access to links that help us to do, late sign in, bathroom sign in, sign out, contact tracing for lunches. So students, all they have to do is enter in their Clever username and password. And it's a one-stop shop for both their tools and resources, but also the links that they would need. So it's a really comprehensive resource that was made possible. It's actually free for districts. The vendors pay for it. But we see this expanding out K to 12 because it really simplifies the headaches with the login process. So we're excited about that. So just continuing on to wrap up. We've also been expanding access to internet across the district, and while we are a fairly affluent district and we kind of take for granted sometimes that all of our students have access to it, there are families among us that don't have the same resources. So we've done extensive work trying to identify those families in need and then getting them the resources that they need in order to gain access. We wrote a Internet Essentials grant to the Department of Education. We were fortunate to receive over $25,000. That is going to fund 55 iPads for students and an additional 25 cellular-enabled iPads for students to be able to Zoom and complete student work, and then an additional 15 Verizon mobile hotspots, for other families that may have access to a device but really just need a hotspot. Challenge with the hotspots is that they really can only serve one student at a time. Believe it or not, a Zoom call or an hour-long Zoom class would chew up about 1 gig of data. The nice thing is that we've got, as you can see in the image, an unlimited plan, but it really requires one hotspot or one iPad per student. And then, for our professional development, we've started a long-term partnership with Global Online Academy that provides synchronous and asynchronous instruction to independent schools from around the globe. They've started a professional development opportunity, taking what they've learned about good pedagogy for these types of learning environments and working with teachers from, again, around the globe to revise their instruction. What's great about this platform and this opportunity is it doesn't just talk about designing online instruction, but there's also opportunities for us to engage in learning more about competency-based learning. They also offer middle school programming to connect our students with other students around the globe. And then, we brought in some familiar faces for the first couple of weeks of PD. Greg Kulawek and Tom Driscoll came from EdTech Teacher. They provided some really highly great feedback, highly respected sessions on topics like digital workspaces, differentiating technology, and PBL and deeper learning and what that looks like in both hybrid and remote environments. And then finally, Dr. Cohen secured access to Dr. Catlin Tucker's online and blended learning course, which is really a big faculty favorite because it's really practical. Not only is it, again, pedagogically sound, but it provides a wide range of practical models such as, playlists and station rotations and choice boards to give teachers the practical tools that they need. And then just to kind of close up, I wanted to close up with some of the silver linings that we're seeing, as difficult as this is. And I can't say enough about the efforts that our teachers have put in to make this the best learning experience possible given the constraints. But I just want you to take a look first at the pictures on the bottom of the screen where students are now able to have access to devices with all sorts of different learning experiences. And what this really provides was something that we couldn't have done a year ago with students who have access to a tool or device. Some are on SD Math, some are in Epic reading books, some are doing Lexia, but you'll also see students using just pencil and paper. And prior to this grant, the type of learning that you're seeing here is not possible. I'm really excited to see what happens when we are able to allow students to live out, our core values of communication, collaboration, which we really can't do as well as we could have in a pre-COVID era, and then ultimately innovation. And then in the top left corner, just to kind of give you an indication of how active this district is in Seesaw, over 2,000 artifacts entered in Clough alone, 1,400 comments from teachers and peers, and then, likes and reviews of student work. Family engagement is pretty good too. So 258 families have, visited to see what's going on in Seesaw. And last and certainly not least, the top right corner is Brenda Webster, who exemplifies, all of our teachers in district who are taking on this challenge head on. It's a very difficult challenge, but they are truly feeling a sense of urgency to try to make it work. I think sometimes they're too hard on themselves, given the effort they're put in, but they are just rising to the occasion. And from a technology standpoint, we just couldn't be prouder of what they're doing, and we're fortunate to be able to support them. So thank you again for the time to kind of highlight what we're doing. Thank you again to my colleagues in the tech department. And again, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Great work all around.
Really great work. I had a quick question.
Yeah.
How have we upgraded the infrastructure, or have we even upgraded the infrastructure from the standpoint of either, I'll call it the wireless spots that are around the schools and the network from a wide area networking perspective, or connectivity into, just the overall internet and so forth?
So I'll turn this over to Joe. Yeah, go Joe.
I'll say I can answer that question. Hi, everybody. We are in the process of actually looking at upgrading our internal infrastructure for the Wi-Fi right now. We've already upgraded the wireline switching about 1.5 years ago. So right now I'm doing the E-rate paperwork to do a RFP for the Wi-Fi in all 4 buildings. We're at the end of we're actually riding kind of a bonus year. Normally I try to keep that on a 5-year cycle, and we want to upgrade to get the faster internal Wi-Fi 802.11ax. So that's in process right now. I should have some updates for that in about a month or so.
But just to commend Joe, the infrastructure was already there, particularly the elementaries. It was awaiting the day when we, would have an influx of devices, and to my knowledge, the elementaries have been able to amply handle the increased traffic.
It's great to see.
Any other questions or comments from the committee before we move on? All right, so new business.
Okay, new business. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a screen share, and I'd like to be able to discuss really our start. And we now have, I believe, 4 days or 5 days of the hybrid model and actual in-person instruction behind our belt. And just like Dave said, I really would like to commend our staff. I think they've been absolutely remarkable and adaptable, and have really, really worked hard in a super challenging situation to provide, high quality instruction and high quality services for our kids. But I'd like to just talk very, very briefly about how the model is going, and most importantly, what some of our next steps are, because I've gotten several emails from parents, Facebook messages, and so on about where we're going with this. And needless to say, it's super, super challenging. But as I said, last Tuesday, we started in earnest, and I would characterize that our schools have, at least initially, kind of a quiet feel to them. I think kids are really, really happy to be back, and I know our teachers are very happy to be back. But as you can see from, this is Jess Fowler, who, like a lot of our art teachers across the district, are kind of doing art in a cart, so to speak, and they're traveling to the kids rather than the kids traveling into the actual art room. And as you can see by her I think she's got, close to 500 pizza boxes. All of our kids have their own individual supplies and so on. And as you can see from the pictures, this is kind of antithetical to, the structure that would be supportive of the pedagogy that we've become very much accustomed to in our district, with our desks kind of in this row separation and the physical separation that's required. I think our teachers are still figuring it out, but by and large are very much stepping up to the challenges of, some of the restrictions that we have, but also, still creating high quality instruction. As Dave alluded to, we still have a lot of technology use going on. And at the secondary level, we have a couple situations where some of our teachers are still delivering instruction remotely to even our in-person teachers, students rather. But we also, I know we are trying to really take advantage of still this good weather, and across all 4 schools, our teachers are trying to get outside with their kids. And, nothing kind of speaks to that. This is Olga Grau's kindergarten class, but God bless Simon Harding, really determined to have his kids performing. And actually this was this morning, as you can see, kind of the makeshift setup that he has literally in the staff parking lot, so his kids can practice, so they can ultimately perform. So, I love this picture because I think it's a testimony of the perseverance of our teachers and the perseverance of our students, given the set of circumstances that we have to deal with. So I think, like at most things in this crisis, it's kind of a day-to-day basis, and we really have to continue to carefully monitor both the statewide cases and transmission rates, as well as the transmission data in both of our communities. If you caught the news today, it's in the Boston Globe. I get the updates on my phone every day around 5 or 6 o'clock. We're now over that 800 number as far as the number of cases, and it definitely seems on a statewide basis, like many states across the country, it's definitely spiking. Some of the predictions are over the next 6 to 12 weeks, we could be looking at potentially a third peak in this crisis. However, the flip side is, if you look at every Wednesday evening, DPH releases the community transmission data. And as you can see here by the 2 arrows, arrow on the left being Upton, and the bottom pointing upward being Mendon. Our two communities still relative to the rest of the state are doing well, and they're in that lowest transmission category in the gray of less than 5 cases per 100,000 residents. And keep in mind that because our two communities have such a low population, the color can change relatively quickly if you were to get a surge of, it could be anywhere from like 8 to 10 cases. So something that we have to watch very, very carefully. Secondly, and I would love to get your feedback on this piece, but we're planning on probably towards the tail end of this week or over the weekend to put out a survey to all of our stakeholders, to our staff members, to all of our parents and students at the secondary level to get feedback, feedback on both the hybrid, but also to our 204 students and families that are in the standalone remote program. How's it going? How is the quality of services? How's the quality of instruction? How does it work within your schedule and so on? And then to use that data to improve, it could be structures of how we're doing things, our practices, and also the instruction and the services that we're delivering. And then last but not least, I think, we look at things at the state, we look at things within our two communities, but then we also have to monitor the data within our schools. As you all know, on Friday, we had our first positive test case of an individual within Nipmuc Regional High School. And that obviously has a lot of implications with regard to then reaching out to both staff and students who could be close contacts. And then as a result, some quarantining happening. It could be amongst students, it could be amongst staff and so on. And that has implications for absenteeism. So as we said before, when we were in the planning stage, this is something that we have to watch very, very carefully. And it's something that I have great concerns about. And I know speaking to members of our leadership team, and I know probably the staff in general, that there can be, a tipping point. And in a district our size and in 4 relatively small schools, there's a concern, if you were to have 5 or 6 teachers who are out quarantining or are absent and so on, and then what the potential implications are for continuity of instruction, but then also for students being in that same situation if they have to quarantine as well. The good news is the data shows that the cases that are happening across the state, and again, I think on every Friday, this DESE is releasing the data. And last Friday, it was about 160 cases across the state. And, keep in mind, there's 321 districts in the state. Breaks down to 92 student cases and 68 staff cases. And Commissioner Riley represents these, as he refers to them, as kind of one-off situations where it isn't necessarily happening as the result of contact that happens within the school. In most cases, if not all, it is a situation where somebody brings it into the school from outside. So we've got concerns moving forward, and I'll just bring them to the fore because I think all of this is interrelated. We are still in the situation of trying to find para-educators, custodians. We're getting a little closer with that, but also nurses. We are going above and beyond some of our traditional means of advertising, usually through, websites such as School Spring or the State Superintendent's Association job site. We're looking at things like Indeed.com. We're doing putting it out to our community through Facebook, through direct email, and so on. But I know our principals are extremely stressed about, stretching people in multiple directions. This is another one that ties directly to what I was talking about on the last piece, was substitutes. We're in a situation now, and again, it's only been 5 days of in-person instruction, that people are really stepping up, and specifically staff members, that if they have any symptom in the least bit, the most mild sore throat, or whatever, they are not coming to school. And in some cases you can say, well, at the secondary level, can you zoom in and can you still give instruction and teach remotely? And sure, we had a couple situations like that at the high school today. However, you still have to have somebody physically with the students in person. And we're finding right now that we're having a real difficult time finding substitute teachers. And, we're not alone. I know probably across the state, but I know even speaking to my colleagues throughout the Blackstone Valley, they're also having this concern. So again, I really hope and pray we keep at this place where all of our really precautions and really meticulous safety measures do work. But I think everybody needs to really remain vigilant about, keeping those safety measures in place and consistently following them. And then I think, related to that, education, communication, and trust are really the key in moving forward and ensuring that children, and particularly younger children, but across all grades, are not coming to school if they are sick in the least bit, and that there's any symptoms whatsoever, and that our families are being really meticulous about checking symptoms before a student arrives at school. And I say that education and communication piece and trust are also really important as far as getting the correct information out there. I think, defining exactly what a close contact is, specifically, have you been within a person who has been found to be COVID positive for a sum total of 15 minutes during the course of a school day? And have you been within 6 feet of that person, again, cumulatively within 15 minutes? People knowing these things, what we're finding now anecdotally from all stakeholders, from staff members, from our parents, and so on, there is some, and I wouldn't even say misinformation, but a lack of complete information with regard to the steps that need to be taken should there be a suspected case. So I do want to commend John Clements and Marianne Moran, along with Leslie McGinnis, who handled the situation absolutely perfectly at the high school on Friday. That was, again, our first case. I hope it'll be, quite frankly, our last case. But again, I think we have to take this day by day in moving to whatever the next steps may be. Again, our stated goal in this is to bring back more kids, starting with our early elementary grades. But again, I think we have to, on a daily and on a weekly basis, really assess how we're doing as a district, how our two communities are doing, and how it's going across the state. Does anybody have any questions or have anything specifically? And I could, I'll be more than happy to share a draft with the school committee, because what we're looking to do is we're looking, to collaborate with our various associations in creating a good comprehensive survey to get that baseline data about how the hybrid model is working.
So Joe, when you're talking about the tipping point for being able to supervise children while they're on site in school, how close do you think we are to that tipping point, and what would be the plan for mitigating that if it is encountered?
So that's a great. So it's going to vary. It's going to vary from school to school. Okay, but let me give you a real life anecdote. I think there's a very good chance that I will be spending a portion of the day tomorrow, Sean, as a substitute teacher at Misco Hill, for the simple reason that I got a call at 4:30 from Jen Mannion that she has 6 people out tomorrow. And then she also has concerns that there's 5 IEP team meetings going on. So as a result, during certain periods of the day, teachers may have to leave a portion of their class. We try to do it during their planning period to provide feedback to the IEP team. I think you honestly have situations where people are, again, do not have COVID, but they might have, it might even be something like seasonal allergies, but they're being so scrupulous, and I give them credit, they should continue to do this, they're not coming to work. So I think you could have conceivably a situation where, say, one day at Misco or at Nipmuc, you had 9 people out. I might have to make a determination very, very early in the morning at like 5:45. Today will just have to be a remote day, because then you can't get into a situation where you're going to say, okay, this block, I'm going to combine 3 classes and I'm going to put them in the auditorium, or I'm going to put them in the gymnasium and so on, because then you get into other safety concerns and so on. So I don't think it takes much. Obviously the substitute situation is a little more challenging at the elementary level, for the simple reason that it's one teacher with one group of students, essentially for the full day. So again, it's going to vary from school to school. And then, what I've described are situations where it's a day-to-day illness, but I can tell you right now, we have situations at Nipmuc where people are in quarantine. And when they're in quarantine, that's 2 weeks that they're not physically in the building. And yes, they're doing great work. They're servicing kids remotely, but again, you still need somebody physically to be with kids, if for no other reason, for reasons of supervision. Yep.
Okay. I had a little anecdote from my daughter that's in Nipmuc. She, we've, as you said, we've become very reliant on the group work thinking and project work within Nipmuc and the other schools, which is very impressive. It actually does a very good job. But the COVID situation has forced them all to be separate.
Yeah.
But what they're finding is they'll be in the same classroom, but they're communicating on their devices to make sure they can meet as groups, which is just the strangest thing. But but at least we're still trying to do things. We're trying to adapt and overcome as there are problems that they see.
And again, this is super, super challenging, and I can't commend our staff enough. They're making the best of a situation. And again, I think we're all in the same place. We see the value of our kids being with their teachers, with the staff, and so on. I think the socialization is huge. I think kids, even with the restrictions, kids are still kids. They need to be with each other. They need to socialize and so on. But it's just, it's super, super challenging. You know, I facetiously have said to a lot of people, I feel like MacGyver running this district. Like, we're keeping this together, you know, using paper clips and gum. You know, it's super challenging. And that's why the point about everybody working together, everybody, not only our staff, but even all of our families, you know, being very meticulous about, you know, how they're sending their kids to school, ensuring that they're sending their kids to school very, very healthy. I've had some parents at point blank tell me, yep, you know what, every single morning when the kids are having breakfast, I take their temperature. Perfect. Continue doing that. But I think we're also seeing anecdotally situations where when COVID cases are popping up or there's suspicion of COVID, I've had some conversations with some families, with some nurses regarding suspected COVID cases. It's kind of what you're hearing anecdotally. It is people letting their guard down and them, say on a weeknight or on a weekend, getting together with family members, getting together with close friends, in a social setting, in somebody's house or something. It's not like they're going to these enormous super spreader events or doing anything that's crazy over the top. But I think it's a little bit of that element of people letting their guard down. And as a result, we've had within the community that, again, funnel their way to our principals and funnel their way to our nurses. And then to me, that, you know, parents who have come and taken their kids out of our schools for the reason of suspected COVID cases because they were at a party or they were at a get together, you know, and again, a Sunday afternoon family get together or a barbecue or something like that, where somebody ended up testing positive. So those are the types of cases that we're starting to see. And, you know, I can honestly say our principals' jobs descriptions have radically changed this school year for the simple reason of a lot of the work that goes into, you know, tracking these things down, having conversations. In the case of John and Marianne, doing some of that COVID, doing some of that contact tracing within the confines of the school and so on. So I know a lot of people really want answers and they want definitive answers of like, okay, we're going to bring back K-2 on November 1st or whatever it's going to be. I think we've got to really take this situation day by day and week by week.
Well, in any case, my compliments to the administrators and the staff for being so adaptive through this time. We're really, really grateful for that.
Thank you.
Joe, on the surveys that'll be going out, I assume that'll be to parents at all, like pre-K
Correct.
through 12, and then students at the secondary level, or?
Correct. Yeah, MISCO and NIPMUC students.
Okay. And when we survey the students, is it possible, like, for students to have an option to make their survey anonymous? Because I feel like maybe we're missing some kids who maybe don't want to or uncomfortable sharing their feedback if their name is attached to it. But
yeah,
maybe...
no, we'll do exactly like what we did last year, Vicki. All of the surveys will be anonymous.
Okay.
We don't request names or email addresses. The only time that we did that were the summer surveys, so we could track specifically the standalone remote program and the busing piece.
Okay. And then I think there was some surveys on the full remote for the first few weeks, correct? Did you get any kind of feedback on how that was working for?
No, we haven't. We did surveys on the full remote back in the spring when we had gone, but we haven't done anything qualitative on this school year yet. We just haven't done it yet.
Okay.
Joe, going back to the surveys again, could you talk a little bit about at least general areas that we're going to be soliciting information and data gathering? I just want to make sure that we're getting a sampling of how students are doing emotionally with the stress and adjustment, to make sure that there's the opportunity to comment on the asynchronous piece as well as the in-person piece, and how people
Sure.
feel kids are respecting some of the safety measures too. I just want to make sure we're getting kind of data across all of these different.
Yeah, that's a great question, Carrie. I think we're going to look at, first of all, the pragmatic pieces, you know, and I am certainly cognizant that for a lot of our families, this is really, really challenging, and particularly for the younger kids, the daycare piece and so on. So the pragmatic piece is as far as how it's working in their schedule and so on. But then the instructional piece, as far as to your point about, is there sufficient guidance as far as those asynchronous learning? Do kids find it to be meaningful? Or is, hopefully it's not the case, or is it viewed as strictly busy work? You know, again, particularly if a child has an IEP or receives some type of special services, are they getting sufficient services both during the remote asynchronous piece, but also during the in-person instruction? I do think one of the silver linings, and I've gotten some real initial feedback both from families and from teachers, you know, there is something to be said about having a class size of 10, 11, or 12. And, you know, there is some positive sentiments about how much can get done in a period or during the course of the day with such a small group of students. So getting some feedback about how that piece is working. And then, as you said too, about the safety measures that we've put in place. Are they just right? Are they not enough? Are they overly onerous? And so on. And then also, and I know how passionate you are about this. I think we'll also look for resources to kind of get the heart of the social emotional piece for our students. That you know, the feelings of, you know, are they optimistic? Are they pessimistic? Do they feel overwhelmed? How are they dealing with all this? But then also getting the parent piece, again, in the aggregate of their perceptions of how their students are doing.
Great, thanks, Joe. Is there
And-
one of the other pieces of feedback that I've been hearing from folks in the community is they're feeling like, and this is going to happen anytime you have different cohorts, but that pace might not be the same from one cohort to another. Is that something that we'll also be able to capture, do you think?
Yeah, I don't see why not. And probably the best purveyors of that information would be our staff. You know, again, I think anecdotally, if I'm at, you know, a soccer field and I'm talking to the Lawrences whose girls are in cohort 2 and my girls are in cohort 1, you know, that might not be necessarily the best information, but yeah, we can definitely gather that. What my intention is, and I'd love to get your feedback before it goes out, is I'll share with the committee the draft surveys before they go out, and please feel free to comment and suggest.
Thanks, Joe.
I just had a quick question, kind of maybe piggybacking on what Carrie was just talking about, because it would be good to understand also, though, from a teacher perspective and from a curriculum perspective, how much is really being able to be delivered in the structure we're in, and how much progress is really getting made in terms of what's happening and what's going on there. Because I see that's a comment out there that's constant is, okay, how do you deliver a full year's worth of curriculum across, you know, even though it's a condensed and it's twice as much time and it's half a year, but it's this, it's that, the asynchronous, the synchronous, like like how fast and how much curriculum are we truly going to be able to deliver?
That's a great question. And you know, the contrarian view, and I've heard this, I don't know if it's necessarily a majority view, but I've heard this amongst staff, I've heard this amongst parent, of saying, well, wouldn't you be better off in just staying full remote? And you know, that way you're getting more, you know, at least virtually face-to-face contact time with kids. Now, I don't think that's a majority view. And I think, you know, our operational theory here is we need to do what we need to do to have in-person instruction, and really view the hybrid model as something that's transitional to full in-person instruction. That's really what we're aiming for. However, again, we've got to look at the progression of the virus to see how viable is that actually going to be. I think to your larger point, no, clearly, if we're seeing kids only for 2 days of in-person instruction, we're not going to be able to progress with the curriculum as we would normally. So again, I think we kind of go back to this theme of we're trying to figure this out and we're doing the best that we can. However, you know, none of these options do we really like, and do we have a great deal of gusto and enthusiasm toward, unfortunately.
No, I can understand that. I think it's, I mean, I can tell you, I think it's great that we're actually back in school for even a, you know, even if it is only half time, I think many of those students are happy to be back in person.
Yes.
So, but I think it's an interesting point that we have to put out there in terms of how much curriculum will really get delivered. And I know everybody else is challenged with the same thing. And I know everyone's trying to do, you know, the best job they can do, but you know, to your point, it's not going to be like it is when everybody is there full time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Joe, I think some of that, from my conversations with parents, I think some of that is some of the families, some of the students feel like in their child's process of development, the social aspects and the being able to talk with other people and relate to them is more important at that age, or
Absolutely.
at that area of development, versus some of the high school students where they feel like more independence is okay because they're learning subjects and learning materials, so they can use the offline time to a better advantage. So you know, I've heard a bunch of questions about, you know, can I get my, you know, elementary kids to be in person more often or for more days, because otherwise they just aren't taking an interest in school anymore, which is that's an emergency situation, you know.
Absolutely.
So,
I agree. And again,
I
our
don't know
goal,
if you've been thinking about that.
Our stated goal remains of getting more and more kids back progressively, particularly those with the highest needs and those who are our youngest learners. We've been very, very consistent in doing that. And again, right now we have 5 days under our belt. It's our hope that we are going to be in a place where our two communities maintain a low transmission rate, and also where we do not have a lot of cases within our district as well.
Any other questions from the committee on the hybrid model and next steps? There are a couple of other items still under new business.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So the second thing is you do have in your packet a revised MOA with our regular transportation provider, Telstone and Son, for payment for this current school year, FY21, based upon being fully remote through October 13th and now transitioning into a hybrid model. So just as we did, I want to say it was probably we finalized it, Jay, in May or June, where we kind of renegotiated our bus contract with Telstone for not providing all of the services that the company typically would. We look to do that again this year. And I really want to commend Jay for negotiating this and really taking care of all of this. But keep in mind, part of our negotiation was to freeze the rates from last year to this year. And we've actually also not only froze it, but lowered it to about 96% of the total rates. And as I say in my background note, I think this is really, really important. And I think it is a delicate balance. Keep in mind, Telstone and Son is a very small company. They are dependent upon 3 districts, ourselves, Blackstone, Millville, and Douglas really is their essential business. So they're really, like a lot of small businesses, they're also struggling for a long period of time. Their drivers that drive our kids were on unemployment, and a lot of those benefits for those folks have run out. So it's kind of a look to have something that's fair, but also takes into account, that they have to offset their operating costs, but kind of the delicate ecosystem that if Telstone and Son were to go belly up, we would not have buses or drivers to transport our kids. So, it's my recommendation that the committee approve this MOA for our contract through a formal vote, a motion and vote. And Jay, I don't know if there's anything that you want to add to that.
No, not really. Just what I would stress is that the 96% was an average of paying them a reduced rate of about 75% on the days they weren't doing anything and 95% on hybrid days when they were back in. So we just kind of put it all together and it came out to about 96%. And it's much easier to just bill it as a straight flat percentage than to try to say this day we did this and this day we did that. And I'd reiterate what Joe said. They're a company that we desperately need to have when kids are in school. And these bus companies lost lots of money in the spring and they can't continue to lose money and stay in business.
Any questions or comments from anyone on the committee? All right. So we need a motion to approve the MOA.
Motion to approve the MOA for Telstone, the regular transportation contract.
Second.
Vote by roll call.
Sean Nicholson, aye.
Lee Martin, aye.
Bill Desutter, aye.
Carrie Lawrence, aye.
Oh, did we lose Dorothy?
Oh, Dorothy Scally, aye.
Vicki Ludwigson, aye. The motion is approved.
Okay, and the second business item is just the authorization of a purchasing card. It is something that is recommended through the Massachusetts Association of School Business Officials in lieu of having a district credit card. In this case, we ended the district's American Express corporate credit card. It's just the purchasing card system is just another set of, has another set of checks and balances, and it's essentially a credit card designed specifically for public schools. So we have oftentimes a lot of vendors who only accept credit card for payments, and do not accept usually our preferred method of payment, specifically the purchase order system. So this is just another means to do it. So what you have in your packet is an attached resolution authorizing us to apply for a P card. Jay, I believe, who we're looking to do business with actually requires school committee authorization. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So you have a formal motion and a vote to approve the resolution, giving us authorization to proceed with the purchasing card.
Do we pay like some sort of annual fee or something to use these cards, or?
No, there's no fees. There's no anything. It's just, we've got this corporate American Express card, and quite honestly, they're very difficult to deal with. So this is just a better system. So we're just going to transition to a different form, but there's no fees. There's no cost to us. We pay the bill every month. It'll just allow us to keep track of things much better and much easier.
Got it. Any questions, comments, discussion? So we need a motion to authorize the use, to approve the resolution to authorize the use of the P card.
Motion to approve the resolution for authorizing the P card.
Second,
And vote by roll call.
Sean Nicholson, aye.
Lee Martin, aye.
Bill Desutter, aye.
Aye.
Dorothy Scally, aye.
Vicky Ludwigson, aye. Motion is approved.
Vicki, we're going to need you to come in sometime in the next couple of days and sign both the Telstone MOA and this thing so I can send it back.
Okay,
I know how much you love to come visit us.
sure. I'll come on Amazon School. Stalker. All right. So I think with that, we're moving on to community comments. And just a few that I'm seeing. We covered serving parents of elementary families. So
Yeah,
where
we
do
are surveying parents of elementary.
yes.
families.
Plans for outdoor classrooms and tents.
So right now we do not have anything tentatively planned for building outdoor classrooms. However, tents, we did originally we did a we got a price quote for tents that were exorbitantly expensive. However, we have since gotten a better quote. However, there is also a process that we need to go through to get approval from the town. I think if we do something, we'll definitely look to do something at the high school. I know Simon very much wants to have a tent kind of on the side of the school, kind of extending the overhang so his kids can play as long as possible, and then potentially something at the middle school as well.
By the way, I live adjacent to the high school, and I've very much enjoyed hearing all the band students play the last couple of weeks.
Oh, that's great.
So from Shelley Cook, 2 questions. If school's being held remotely due to COVID conditions, staffing issues, how will you be sharing that via Twitter, news channels?
Yeah, probably, definitely Twitter, and probably through robocalls, robocalls and so on. And the check time would be as soon as I possibly could. I think, in the case of the high school, you'd really have to get the word out by something like 5:45 or so. Typically the bus leaves for the first of the high school stops around 6:10, 6:15. So we really have to get that up and running as soon as possible. But again, we hope we don't get into that situation. And the way we don't get into that situation is by really all of our stakeholders being really meticulous about social distancing.
Right, as I'm not seeing any other community comments. Move on to correspondence. Do we have any?
We do not have any.
Right. And other matters not anticipated by the committee within 48 hours of the posted meeting. Don't believe there are any. So future agenda items, additional COVID-19 policies, November 2nd, and the hybrid model standalone remote survey results on November 2nd. And with that, we will roll call to executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Exemption Number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to negotiations with the district's labor associations, because doing so in open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee. The committee will not return to open session.
Sean Nicholson, aye.
Lee Martin, aye.
Phil Desutter, aye.
Carrie Lawrence, aye.
Dorothy Skelly, aye.
Vicki Ludwigson, aye. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Night.